Coming up on today's wrestling news, WWE's ongoing troubles with Def Rebel.
Really encouraging news about the pay gap being closed.
The Elimination Chamber may not be coming to the UK.
And there is a creative thought about doing a match that you might not have expected to see.
Let's go. I'm Michael Hamflett.
I'm Michael Sidgwick.
And this is the Dudley News.
Dudley News.
And we're going to start with, speaking of popular things, Def Rebel, Sidge, are once again in the news. Fightful Select have done some absolutely amazing reporting on this. There has been speculation about their impending end of times with WWE. There's been advertisements about new jobs coming out, and let's be honest, there's been criticisms of their work pretty much since they've been in post. But Corey Brennan and Sean Ross Sapp have kind of come together for something on this to report from multiple sources a few updates. Corey Brennan was the first to note that while the company are aware of the fan backlash and they are currently monitoring the actions, that's probably Triple H on his multiple burners, as of this year there hadn't been a plan to have them replaced immediately, but on October 22nd, WWE posted a job listing to look for a, quote, Director of Music Strategy and Operations. Sean Ross Sapp then added it wasn't specifically for a composer, the type of thing that Jim Johnston would have had many years ago, and the job would also communicate with UFC, PBR and other TKO properties, so it might not be a like-for-like replacement of Def Rebel. There was then interestingly some comments from speaking with talents where Brennan was met with frustration across the board that, quote, Def Rebel's methods and themes they produce, with several talents expressing negativity about their current themes. Sean Ross Sapp noted that they were never told outright why a lot of the music was changed from the CFO's era, which was broadly quite popular as far as new stuff goes. There's been various like licensing rights and things like that WWE have been tied up with. In another quite fun note about Def Rebel, Corey Brennan was let known that Randy Orton had rejected remixes of his Voices song. This also speaks to CM Punk, I believe, echoing something similar when he returned around Survivor Series. So this is like the new Hart McGee. I need those Voices remixes on YouTube ASAP, please.
I hear voices in my head.
That must be Randy Orton's time to come to the ring. And just regarding Jim Johnston, who we mentioned previously, who people of our era will often obviously speak of in hallowed tones.
Glowing terms.
It is unlikely. Obviously, the man's in his 70s now.
I mean, that's just pure empty nostalgia, isn't it?
Of course it is,
I love them, but come on.
There's no update on any sort of current relationship with the company. But this was from the report. Those we've spoken to say that they wouldn't be surprised to see a bridge being built under the new regime. Look, even if, this is just me by the way, even if he isn't making themes now, just pay him like a music writer. Just pay him in perpetuity for those things. He deserves all those all that mailbox money for the soundtrack in all of our youths. But yes, Def Rebel, it looks like the beginning of the end.
It does indeed. Right, I'll have this thing where I'm very conscious that sometimes I'm a complete dickhead. So I always like to say, if there's someone or something I don't like personally, I'll try and say something nice before I give my opinion. Look, the broad consensus here is that Def Rebel are not particularly good. A lot of the memes, a lot of those custom songs that popped off on X and Twitter earlier this year, they were too good. It was too, the satire was too effective. I would almost say indistinguishable from the source material. Look, it seems like it's something that a lot of fans want. It seems like something that a lot of talent want. This would, you could file this under no-brainer for me. You could file this under no-brainer for me. I personally don't think the themes are very good. Worse than not being very good, I will get to the nice part imminently. Worse than being not very good, they are like almost like broken and completely ineffective and almost counterproductive. We've talked a lot about the Royal Rumble and the pageantry of that show dwindling in recent years. Obviously they're huge successes, let's not be stupid, but I think everyone has a similar reaction of, who's that? I can't tell by the theme, which might indicate that people just skip them when they're watching the TV shows or whatever, or just don't pay attention.
Worst ever.
Yeah, one of the absolute worst of all time. So it seems like a natural move. I've got two more comments before we get to the next story. One, WWE are utterly and completely minted. They have more money than they know what to do with. They'll have more money they could ever use, even if they, sort of raise the salaries up to like an actual standard that's worth it. For the talent, and still have money to spare. Just do licensed themes.
Yeah.
Just do licensed themes. It's absolutely awesome. Second comment, this is the nice bit, right? For all the criticisms of Def Rebel, and in my opinion, warranted. I can't recall, right, a music composer within wrestling making a crowd look like the first night of Woodstock 1999, like Def Rebel did, in conjunction with Jey Uso, who's more over than the theme. Like that Backlash France, it looked like the first night of Woodstock 99 when Korn go absolutely crazy and I just want to go back in time. So I will say, if nothing else, Def Rebel did that. Some happier news now, potentially anyway. PWI Insider, or PW Insider even, Jesus Christ, fourth time lucky. If you're an amateur on the news like me, I'm very sorry, normal service will resume shortly. PW Insider, yay, have reported that per recent signings, it would seem that the pay gap is being closed, and that women are now, who have either signed recently to the company or have re-signed deals, are now either extremely close to, or their pay is now comparable to that of the men's talent. Incredibly overdue. This really should have happened back in 2015 when they pretended that it was all going to be equal, and this parity took them purportedly 9 years, but we are here at last. That doesn't really solve the pay issue in wrestling. It's been widely reported, and I believe this firmly, that relative to the English Premier League, the NFL and the NBA, like most sports leagues, and the UFC as well, who have their own issues with pay, it's still not enough. It's still not enough of the pie. There's absolutely enormous pie. You're not thinking of the whole pie, Jenny, that WWE have, but really good, a really good start.
Yeah, I think it, like, everything at the moment feels like, and of course it's PR, of course it's spin. There are plenty of reasons. Just look at yesterday's news as to why WWE would want good PR and good spin out there, Legendo. But this kind of story joins several that have come from this new era, this new regime that seem to be, like, they get as many out there as possible to make it seem like they are finally for the talent. It's things like this. There's like a 10 or a 12 day gap between days over Christmas, and that's like unheard of in the WWE machine, and that's like an enormous change. Do you remember that interview Bayley did a few years ago with the mainstream outlet?
Oh my God, it was brutal.
The presenter's jaw hit the floor when she found out what Bayley had to pay for personally, and roughly what she was getting paid.
And how she got around.
Yeah, like to fall on her back for a living and then pay your own travel and hotel to the next town and whatever. It was this realisation for the millionth time for those outside the bubble that wrestlers go horrifically underpaid, and like obviously without any kind of union, because was it Hogan said in the documentary, and Jesse Ventura was stirring up trouble in 1986. They've never had any power, so the only way they get any of these perks or benefits, unfortunately, is because of trickle-down capitalism, and here's some trickling down. I guess it's, as you say, long overdue.
Yeah, long overdue and a slow start.
Yeah, lots to do.
A promising one, I guess.
Yeah. Lots to do, I guess, here in the UK if you want a WWE PLE, because it's not, as per original reports, going to be Elimination Chamber 2025. There had been reports a couple of weeks ago about it being in Manchester or Birmingham, them being the hot favourites. Not London, no sign of that yet, even though, like the mayor was given such a lovely little belt. Like Tony Khan.
To drink it. It's what Hulk Hogan imagined the WWE title to look like in 1993.
He will literally hang it off his mayoral Christmas tree this year. But WrestleVotes came through.
Tony Khan's got his up since July.
Well, indeed, I must wear the belt so big. A massive one with the full plates. WrestleVotes came through to say, not just yet, but coming soon. Quote, we're told that talks for the Elimination Chamber PLE did cool off. Talks were good and successful. However, the UK and those locations...
Not that successful.
Indeed. Those locations we mentioned, Manchester, Birmingham and London, will focus on hosting a bigger PLE down the road, which leads us to Elimination Chamber, and we're told that the show will be taking place at the Scotiabank Arena in Toronto. UK fans, don't worry, you'll get something down the line, no doubt about it. I don't think this is as big an issue as it would have been even 5 years ago. Like this year was Clash at the Castle. Last year was Money in the Bank. The year before that was Clash at the Castle in Cardiff. Major, massive, canon PLEs taking place in the UK 3 in 3 years. That it's unheard of.
Yeah.
Like WrestleMania feels closer than ever, or a Royal Rumble at Wembley, something along those lines. I think this would have been a bigger disappointment years back, but we're just in a different era for this now, aren't we?
Different era now. We're not spoiled yet. We're nowhere near that, but we are getting serviced. We are getting serviced as fans in the United Kingdom. I guess as a UK fan, look, if you're familiar with my sort of output as a producer, probably not the biggest fan of WWE TV. Live WWE is an absolutely incredible experience. I think I made his live because he's Dr. Fed.
Yeah, sure.
He loves the Fed. We were sat in Cardiff watching Clash at the Castle 2022.
Yeah.
And I was just really having a great time. The show was fantastic. Live, you just get the full sort of bombast and spectacle. The themes are so loud. The atmosphere was incredible.
I wasn't even at the Raw after WrestleMania, and after 40 minutes of zero wrestling, didn't you say, I think Hamflett might be right.
Yeah.
Not a move or a hold.
And then in Cardiff, I was sat next to Hamflett and I went, God, I think the Fed rules.
There's something special.
And he was loving it. So I would like to experience that again. It's nice to know that if not Elimination Chamber, UK fans will get it. And if you're not a fan, or if you're not, residing in the United Kingdom, I think, everyone can be in agreement that the crowds are really, really hot, and that makes for a great atmosphere that translates to the television wherever you live. So, another good thing that WWE has done. My big thing about WWE is that I think they're winning. Well, partly for a lot of reasons, but they don't give you too much. I think they're very, very economical with how they do the storytelling. It's a bit slow for some. The biggest genius move, strategy-wise, mounted by Nick Khan and Paul Levesque, is this: doing the PLE B shows in the international markets, because you get a lot of rematches. They're not as big, by very careful design as WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, SummerSlam, Survivor Series. But what you get is this red hot atmosphere. So filler becomes this white hot unmissable show, and you still get to save your big stuff and distribute it throughout the year, so you're not burning out fan interest. I think it's the absolute perfect, elegant solution to those old, awful post-WrestleMania doldrums years.
It can't happen with both sides working together, can it? Like with Nick Khan presumably doing the business strategy of it and Triple H doing creative.
Yeah.
With them being in lockstep, you can do it. You can book around those. That you wouldn't have had that when it was one deranged ancient idiot just trying to So it's, I think you can see those two things. It's not going to work forever, but you can see right now they're really in lockstep, and that's how we've had what we've had, I guess.
Absolutely, a great strategy. We've got one more story today, and on the subject of strategy, I guess it's a potential new one. WrestleVotes have sort of reported, or spoke about rather, the idea that within WWE Creative there is a little bit of excitement / hope about the idea of doing something that WWE tends not to do rarely, ultra rare, blue moon rare if ever, and that's an intergender match between, of course, Rhea Ripley and Dominic Mysterio. Now their split was like sort of the big crux of Raw's red hot 3-hour summer, realistically, and subsequent to the matches in which it was the Terror Twins against Dom and Liv. It might have cooled off a little bit, but they're still tying together Rhea and Dom in storylines. We see a lot of riptide attempts that Liv Morgan just gets the feet and gets them out of harm's way. WWE don't do this. I don't think sponsors would take too kindly to intergender violence, which is a separate debate that I'm not getting into, especially in this format. But fans obviously are thirsting for it. Every time they even come close to interacting, there's this molten reaction. And two things on this before I pass over to you that might make it a bit more plausible than in years past. One, they've done it with Sasha Banks and Reggie. Yep. So they have done it before. That was very, very careful, and that was sort of Wild West. We'll just do anything. We'll just do anything.
Thunderdome era, yeah.
Two, there was something else that a year ago was inconceivable, and that was actual, honest-to-God bloodletting in a WWE ring. We've seen it in angles, if it was a bit visual effectsy. And we've seen the real thing with CM Punk and Drew McIntyre, of course, at Hell in a Cell. So there is precedent for old rules to be broken, so maybe, just maybe, it might happen.
Yeah, I think there are ways, obviously, to do this. I think like Sasha Banks and Reggie might be the best version ever of like bending your own rules to still fit like that match. It's such an achievement from Sasha Banks, really, and like we kind of love Reggie at WhatCulture, but he himself would say that he was kind of being like guided around that ring at the time, and then there's been a couple of other times where it's felt more like a bit, which sort of works against the point of what you're trying to do. I'm thinking of Nia Jax and Dean Ambrose before Ambrose left the company.
Yes.
That in itself was scanning as a burial, and it's like, well, if that's a burial, you're not then being, and they've used like Nia Jax in Royal Rumbles for like big pops, which so they're like the way they've kind of tiptoed around it has always felt like they've been trying to stay within their own guidelines. But to your point, those guidelines do seem
looser than ever.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. And with Rhea and Dom, this feels like the third year in a row where we are talking in these sort of, and realistically this has been going on since SummerSlam. If this was to go ahead, I think they could probably, because of how far you have to keep them apart physically, you could possibly get this to WrestleMania. And this would be like the third year in a row where they've kind of put one on the board in the summer. I'm thinking of Rhea and Dom, Jimmy and Jay, and now this, where it's just everybody wants it, so you
Yeah.
can continue to build the anticipation. I've seen fantasy booking where people have talked about how Dominic Mysterio would win a Royal Rumble, and then, or like Rhea Ripley would win a Royal Rumble just to challenge our Dominic Mysterio, just to sacrifice her spot, just to get her hands on him. And people are encouraged, and I think WWE will be listening to that. And as you say, there's maybe things behind the scenes that will ultimately get in the way that we won't know until it happens or it doesn't. But stuff like this feels closer. I think when you hear it pitched, I think a lot of this is so that we can talk about it, so that you can talk about it in the comments. It's to sound it out, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think they want to test the pulse of it.
So it's kind of like a feedback exercise. I will say one more thing before we close. In regards to this story, I have no doubt whatsoever that Dominic Mysterio would, to use words that kids use, and I'm 39 years old, Dominic Mysterio would absolutely understand that assignment, and I think he would just get it. It would be absolutely incredible value. It just seems like almost the match that heel character was born to wrestle.
Yes, I agree. What do you think? Let us know in the comments below, and until next time, check out a video. It's going to be somewhere here-ish, and we will see you soon.